So as people start to trickle in, thank you for being here and coming back to another, as I say, delicious dose. You may laugh at my silliness or corny jokes of 7 by 7 by 7. And you may be getting a little behind the scenes of the storyteller's talking story. That's a bonus. You don't need to pay any more to have that. So we're going to wait about 5 to 7 minutes before we introduce our first storyteller. As you settle in, relax. You will be muted for now, just so that the storytellers can have the stage. I'm going to put a couple of questions in the chat. The first one is, and I'll also say it, is where are you this evening? Where are you joining us from? I'm in North Carolina. You will hear from our storytellers. Storytellers, you can unmute yourselves if you want to share as well, but we've got people in Hartford, Connecticut, or near Hartford.
Where's Rapid City?
One town over.
One town over from Hartford. We've got Las Vegas. 2 New Yorkers, although one of them is, without her knowledge, kind of representing Oklahoma this evening. Oh. No, she's not. But because it's the 7 by 7 by 7 is supposed to be 7 completely different places. Oh. But you're in New York too. Boston.
I grew up in Oklahoma. Yes.
Yeah. San Francisco. And Nick is in Virginia, Baltimore?
Maryland.
Maryland.
Yeah, District Heights, Maryland.
Wonderful. And as you are starting to file in, and I really do appreciate you being here, by all means, you can answer that question in the chat. Share with us where you are. We've got people from all over the United States, which is lovely. The other question I have, I'll type it in a moment, is what one word best reflects your day? Not 2 words. Not a third of a word. What one word best reflects your day?
Duolingo.
Hello to, I'm going to run down our guests, and then we're going to get started with our first storyteller. So hit Ruth, Anna, Angela, Anna Perky in, I believe, Chicago, James Cooper, North Carolina, Glenda's in Arizona. There's a lot of people. Nick is one of our storytellers. We've got Vegas. We've got Tracey in Hewlett, Long Island, one of our storytellers. Hi, Steph, who seems to be from 7 different places. I think she's in Chicago now. I see Howard here in Minnesota. Gail is in Brooklyn. She's one of our storytellers. And let's just answer this question, if you would, before we get started more formally. And that is, how do you feel today? What's one word? Ambitious, magical. Gail, you didn't follow directions. It's okay. Therapeutic.
Wasn't listening.
Fulfilling. Good words. Myra is telling me that it's a repeat question. I may have asked this question at another one of our events. If that's the case, I just think it's a really good question. Philly. Great. Minnie is feeling mature. I'd like to know more about that, Minnie, perhaps afterwards. Now, if you can stay, after the show, the sort of 7 storytellers share their story, we'll have a Q&A, sort of a little bit less formal. Talk story, talk about the stories, whatever's on your mind. If you have any questions for a specific person or for the group, by all means, you can ask that. Keep it cleanish, please. Very good. And I will ask, Howard, I see you here. You tend to be someone who asks, I think, compelling questions. So I'm going to put you on the spot. Would you please put in the chat a question that people can answer? Jill Stanton and Shane is here. Shane Hendricks, good to see you both. We're going to get started in a couple of minutes, more formally. I know we've kind of already gotten started. I do want to thank everyone for being here. I know there's a lot of ways you can be spending your Tuesday evening, so to take an hour and a half and spend it with us, I really appreciate. Stephanie says, I think we should all message the same thing. Aha, Stephanie, I can see that. You see, you realize that, right? All right, so keep asking your questions or putting them in the chat. And most of the people here have been on one of the events that we've done before. This one is called 7 by 7 by 7. We have 7 storytellers, and they're sharing 7-ish minute true stories. My name is Sean. Many of you know that. I'm in Chapel Hill. I'm originally from New York. My heart is absolutely still in New York, but my body is not. I started this group towards the end of March with the intent of creating a space for people to share stories, whether it was related to the coronavirus or not. And look at us now. So we've got more and more people coming, which I feel great about, and some just fantastic storytellers. So I really thank you for being here and supporting everything that we're doing. A couple of things that might help you enjoy your experience if you're not as familiar with Zoom. You have an option to view this on either speaker or gallery mode. I prefer speaker because you will get a big shot of the person sharing the story and just them. And that's speaker mode. Or you can use a gallery, which is a bunch of photos or pictures. I think for most people that should be on the top right part of your screen, particularly if you're a laptop or desktop. Not as sure on an iPhone or a smartphone. It's a little bit different. The other option is, I think for most of you should be to the right if you're on a laptop or desktop, is a chat function. And by all means, ask questions or leave comments for the storytellers. I'm sure that they'd love to hear how you feel about what they've shared. Again, I'm going to ask that you keep yourselves muted while the storytellers are sharing, just so they can have the opportunity to share without any interruptions. And then afterwards, we'll have that Q&A, and we'll be less formal, and you can unmute yourselves, and we can talk. So I want to get rolling with 7 by 7 by 7. Our first storyteller is a middle school teacher, and he is a San Francisco GrandSlam champion. Now, perhaps most important, last week, our first storyteller was in a competitive open mic with several very good storytellers. And one of those storytellers was me. And he crushed us. And am I bitter? Yeah, a little bit. But not bitter enough not to invite him on the show, ask him to not only share his story, but share his story first. So without further ado, please give it up for our first storyteller, David Rodriguez.
Thank you for that, Sean. Thank you for that nice introduction. Gonna take a little risk tonight. Tell a story I haven't told before. And the first line is like this. So stories, can be really dangerous things. As long as I've had memories, since I was about 7, I have had a secret from my mom. And the really terrifying thing about this secret, a secret that a lot of people have, is that the secret wasn't somebody's hurting me and I need your help. The secret was I'm a bad person. And that's why I never told anyone. But I was just desperate for a narrative. A 7-year-old with things happening to him he didn't understand, desperate to find a story that made sense, And I found my first narrative at church. And this particular church was called the Oprah Winfrey Show. And, you know, it was this episode of Oprah where she was sitting with a sex offender, and he was telling the story of how he himself was assaulted when he was a child and drawing like a connection to who he'd become as a man. And even though the whole purpose of this groundbreaking episode of the Oprah Winfrey Show, where she actually came forward as a survivor herself, was to get people like me to come forward with their stories, somehow all I heard was that sex offender on the stage, that's what your future is. That's your story. You know, and I would just like it if I could, you know, be a little indulgent here and ask everybody to close their eyes. And I want you to imagine going through life, having your trauma triggered every time you see Oprah Winfrey. All right, she wasn't doing me any fucking favors with that magazine, let me tell you. There's like no escape, you know? But of course, later I like became an adult and I realized, no, you were not destined for that fate. And, you know, you were a victim. And I gained kind of like an academic awareness of the fact that it wasn't my fault and all these good things. You know, eventually did tell my secret to some close friends, but, you know, I had a choice to make. Like, do I tell my mom? You know, and I just was thinking to my mom was my hero. You know, she was a single mom. You know, when my parents got divorced, she bought this house she could not afford so that I could stay in the same school district and keep my friends. And I didn't have the heart to tell her I didn't have any friends, you know? But like, she would just like, she could like move time and earth. She somehow could work 12 hours a day and just like make it to my track meets, like right in the nick of time. You know, she would like found a way to go faster than light speed, you know. And I remember when she dropped me off at college, she said goodbye. And I said, "Can you stay one more day, Mom?" And she called to see how expensive it was. And I could tell that it was expensive, but she hid that from me. And she stayed one more day. And I remember walking into my dorm room as she sat and stood by her car in the parking lot, and she just stood there watching me until I entered into adulthood. And I just thought, you know, I should carry this one, this secret. I should carry this because she'll blame herself that she let, you know, and I just want to carry this one. And as I went through life though, you know, I had some successes, but like there were things inside of me that weren't whole, you know, and failed relationships, self-destructive behavior, and then a divorce. And I just got into this low point, you know, that inconvenient truth that you don't really like step forward until you hit a low. That's bullshit. But unfortunately it isn't bullshit. So there I was at my low, and I got into therapy. You know, I called, you know, and it was, you know, again, this is not a convenient narrative. I got into therapy after a few sessions. I talked about what had happened to me for the first time. I was sobbing. It was a breakthrough. And then I quit therapy and didn't go back for 5 years. Until another low. It takes more than one sometimes. Remember the theme, narratives are dangerous things. When I flew to Hawaii in a desperate attempt to recover from my divorce and called my therapist from a beach and said, I want to start again. Same person from 5 years ago that had helped me with the breakthrough. And eventually started, you know, doing some real work and got to the point where I decided to be a whole person. I needed to tell my mom what happened, but not because I thought she could handle it, but just because one more time at almost 40 years old, I needed my mom to be my hero. I needed her to sacrifice one more time for me, for my life. So I drove over to her house. I had this whole thing rehearsed. I was going to time it for, my stepdad was there, so she would have a support person there for her. And I got there and he wasn't there, you know, but I was like, I had to go through with it. I sat down on the couch and she had that like mom spidey sense, like that superhero spidey sense. She just knew something was up, right? And I said, Mom, I need to tell you something. And she gripped my hand so tight, it scared me. Like she was saying, like, I know I need to go kill somebody and I need you to get this out so that I can go do it as quickly as possible. Like, my mom was an intense woman, you know, and in that moment I got scared and I thought, what could I say that could match this emotional moment that wouldn't be this horrible truth? I literally was like rehearsing, I have terminal cancer, in my mind. Like, could I live with that for the rest of my life? Could I just live this life having terminal cancer? And no, obviously that wouldn't work. I have to say it. Like that, I have to say it. I have to fill this empty space with this horrible truth, And I said, when I was a kid, my babysitter was a bad person. And then she squeezed my hand again, somehow tighter than the first time, completely, just from that one sentence, understood everything. And she somehow, with her superhuman powers, managed to fill the next 30 minutes with the 30 years of love that I had denied myself. It was a miracle. And it was a turning point in my life. But then I unfortunately had to come back to the theme, which is that stories are dangerous things. Because I was driving in the car with my mom one day, really feeling like this renewed sense of life, that I no longer had this burden that I was carrying. And I told her, Mom, you know what? I never really thought about when you were going through the divorce, when, you were working all those hours, you were also getting your PhD. Like, how the fuck did you do that, Mom? You're incredible. And she just took this painful breath. And she said, I think about that all the time. And I was just mystified. Why does she have this pained look on her face? She said, if I hadn't been so selfish as to get my PhD, we wouldn't have had to hire a babysitter. And that just crushed me. And I'm a teacher, and I teach my students lessons all the time, or I try to make meaning out of things that seem to maybe not have meaning, or help them find meaning in their lives. The other day I was telling a student, yes, sometimes you can swear when you're writing a story, but this essay on Fortnite isn't a good example of that. And I was thinking about another lesson about life, which is that there's no miracles, there's no fairy tales. There's no soulmates. There's no magic, but there are mothers. And mine is a PhD and my personal superhero. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Hey, David, you want to stay unmuted for a sec?
Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
No, because I know when you share a story, you may not want to necessarily immediately talk, particularly that kind of stories.
No, for me, it's the opposite. It's the opposite. It helps me unwind after it. So no worries. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my question was more about your teaching. I have a lot of questions, obviously, about that story, but those can wait. I'm just curious.
Sure.
Are you still teaching? What has that been like for you?
It's been weird. I think that I really took it as a call to arms to give the kids the best experience possible.
Yeah.
I had the most overproduced graduation that you could ever imagine. It was insane. It was a joke. The kids came stage like Beyonce or something. It was overproduced. And I realized that I was putting so much of my emotional feelings and my own sort of loneliness around this COVID thing and pouring it into my students. And that we just had our last day of school. So I'm in this new reality where I'm not making my life about them from morning till evening, trying to salvage this experience for them. So it's been really positive, but a little postpartum with the school year this year, whereas normally it would be super relieved it was over.
Yeah. Well, that was really powerful. And
thank you.
There's some overlap I have, and I'm imagining other people have here as well. And a few people I know are putting some messages in the comments to you, so check them out when you get a sec.
Sure.
I believe they're kind things like "What a great story, thank you." And some people on here know that I used to be a teacher as well. I didn't last as long as I think it seems like you've lasted, but I did have hair like you when I started teaching, and
it helps.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I have no doubt that you did a really good I'm sure that their graduation was kick-ass, even if it was a little overproduced. I'm sure they enjoyed it.
This story, I taught storytelling to my students, and I was originally this was going to be a GrandSlam. I had a GrandSlam on April 7th, and I was going to tell this story. It was the one that I was working on. But that was going to be my first, like, not funny story that I told live. It was my first, like, try at, like, a totally serious story. And I was going to have my students there who were the same age I was around. I was actually twice, which I did a story by two different people. And they were the same age I was at that time. And so they were going to be sort of in the audience. And that would be like worked into. That's why I had a line about my students at the end. I don't know if it really worked in this context, but yeah. So
wow.
This story has been like inside of me for months. It was like COVID made me like just keep holding this inside. So I'm very grateful for this safe space you created to be able to finally like tell it.
Happy that you did it, man. And if this is the story that you've been waiting to tell, I'm just going to assume that little story you didn't pay much attention to, in which you kicked my ass, was just a random little thing you put together last minute, like whatever. Let's not make it about me. I appreciate what you did, David. Great story. Let me introduce you to our second storyteller. Great job. So our next storyteller this evening, he is a director, a writer, and a performer, and he is the author of Gambling Wizards. And he's the co-host of the Gambling with an Edge podcast. So if you are a podcaster like I am, check it out. He ran the Las Vegas StorySlam for 2.5 years. It's not happening anymore. I'm not sure the story behind that, but I am curious. And he also helps curate storytelling shows for a public fit theater. Joining us from Las Vegas, give it up for Richard Munchkin.
Thank you. It's 3 a.m. I'm 25 years old, and my telephone is ringing. And I know who it is. It's my friend Mary. And I answer it, and she's crying. And I know that Mary sleeps with a loaded .38 on the bedside table next to her. Not because she is worried about intruders, but because this may be the night that she decides to take her life. Mary is the daughter of Holocaust survivors, first generation Holocaust survivors have their own special demons to deal with. She has problems with drugs and alcohol, and although she can go out on stage in front of 1,000 people, she is terrified to walk into a mall. And a sneer or a nasty word from a clerk can send her into a tailspin that lasts a week. And I love this woman with every fiber of my being. And what makes her different is that she is willing to do absolutely anything to make the pain stop. And so she gets into therapy, and she goes 3 times a week, and he says, you have to stop using drugs and alcohol. She says, okay. She goes to AA. She goes 2 or 3 meetings a day. The therapist says, you have to go get a job, any job, but you have to go 5 days a week. And the only job she can find is in a boiler room where they sell crap over the telephone to people. And she has a boss that treats her like absolute shit. But she suits up and shows up every day because she believes when the therapist tells her if she listens to what he says, things will get better. And as I say, I love her, and I know that she loves me, but maybe not in the same way. And besides, she has a boyfriend right now. But I think, if I just hang around long enough, one day she's going to wake up and go, oh my God, the perfect guy has been standing right in front of me all along. And many's the night that she will be in her bed with her boyfriend asleep next to her, and I will be in my bed with a girl asleep next to me, and we will talk until the sun comes up the next morning. But we're kind of like magnets with the opposite polarity, and every time we get too close, some force just pushes us apart. And no matter how much you love someone or you want something, sometimes you just have to walk away. And so I move away, and I leave Las Vegas and I go to Los Angeles. And there I enter the dating hellscape that is LA. I went out with a woman who told me over dinner she was an exotic dancer who had a trapeze act. And after dinner, she wanted to go back to her place and smoke Quaaludes in a bong filled with cream de menthe. I was ghosted before that was ever a thing. I went out, 2 different women after going out with me told me they had decided that they were now lesbians. And one woman I actually dated for quite a while until over dinner one night, she passed me an envelope under the table and she asked me to drive 3 towns away to drop it in a mailbox because the government was watching her, and if they saw her mail it, they would intercept it and her mother in Hawaii would never receive it. And so Mary and I were still talking every day on the phone, and she came to LA to visit, and she was staying with me. And I was complaining about all these crazy women I was meeting, and is this just an LA thing, or what the heck is going on? Why is it I keep ending up with these crazy nutbag women? And she listened patiently, and she said, well, you picked them. And I said, what? She said, you think it's an accident that you keep ending up with these same types of women? Your chooser button is broken. And there are moments in life where you are faced with an undeniable truth, and it just floored me. I knew she was right. The problem was not them. The problem was me. And if I was going to end up with the kind of relationship that I wanted and thought I deserved, I was the one that was going to have to change. And so I took a page from her book and I got into therapy, and I, started to unravel why it was that I was going after these types of women and what was I going to do to change it. And I started to see progress. One night I went out with a woman, and over dinner, she had 5 drinks during dinner, and we went back to her place. And the first thing she did was grab a 32-ounce big gulp cup and start pouring a bottle of vodka in it. And I said, I think I'm going to leave before the vomiting starts. And I got in my car and I left. And on the way home, I was smiling because I knew this was progress. I knew that the old me would have stayed behind and tried to fix that woman. But I was no longer willing to do that. Now, I'm happy to tell you that Mary has been clean and sober for 35 years. She is no longer afraid to walk into a mall, and a sneering clerk now, instead of being a problem for her, she says, now I'm their problem. We've been married for over 25 years, not to each other. That would be the Hollywood ending to this story. No, she eventually met the perfect guy for her, and I met the perfect woman for me, and we have had long, healthy, happy marriages. And we still are the closest of friends. And sometimes we will be out together and she will introduce me to someone. And much to my embarrassment, she will say, this is my friend, Richard Munchkin. He saved my life. But the truth is, I think she saved mine. Thank you.
Richard Munchkin, you dog. Great job.
Oh, thanks.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, you do.
Great
Great
job. It's a hard
job.
story for me to tell, actually. But
I think you did a beautiful job. And I'm not much of a blowing smoke up people's butts, so yeah, you did a great job. You started with a gun and you ended with the sort of bow. That's magical right there. Wow. I'm not going to ask a lot. Well, actually, you shared with us a little bit about what happened since then. That might be a bit of an annoying question, but you both got married, but dramatic pause, not to each other.
Right.
Got it. Great. Wow.
And as I say, we're still best of friends.
Wow. Is she in Vegas or LA?
Yep. No, she's in Vegas.
Okay. Wow.
I ended up moving back to Vegas. I was in LA for 30 years. So
yeah. Your other life.
My other life. Yes, that's right.
And I am curious because I did put it. Now, I know you did not tell a gambling story. I love the story you shared, but I'm always very curious about your life as a gambler. This is a rabbit hole that we can't go down because it would take hours. No one probably cares like I care. But hey, here's my one question. I'm putting you on the spot. I've got $100. That's it. It's not a lot. It's a lot to me, but it's not a lot. I'm going to Vegas. I'm thinking about heading into a casino. Richard Munchkin, tell me one thing I need to know.
Yeah, don't use it to gamble. Go see the show La Rev at the Wynn Hotel and Casino.
All right. Oh, I set you up for that. Didn't I? Set myself up for that.
No, I mean, gambling. Like people who buy a gambling book, it's very much like a diet book. They want to read the book and wake up thin. And then when they actually read the book, they realize, oh, you mean I actually have to do a lot of work?
Yeah.
So professional gambling is a job.
Yeah. Also explains why I'm kind of fat, but that's irrelevant. Okay, yeah, so don't use the money. Now, the last question, but I up it up to like 500, 1,000, 10,000, so I have money to burn here a little bit. You're still going to say, go see a show, go do something else. Just don't do it. Fine. Fair.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It's not as glamorous as I was hoping, but that's a good answer and a reasonable answer. All right, thank you very much, Richard. I love that story. Beautiful,
Thanks.
beautiful. Rolling right along. Our third, next storyteller, third of the evening. She is a former lawyer, and I have some questions for her about that. She's performed stand-up, sketch, and improv in New York City and LA. Her voiceover work includes, oh, no way, I should have read your intro more closely. This is amazing. Beavis and Butthead, Angelo Rules, and David Letterman. You appeared on Law & Order SVU. Her short comedy, My BFF, rated 95% funny on Funny or Die and audience favorite at New Filmmakers. Man, how do some of you people do so much in such a short life? I don't understand it. Astounding. As a speechwriter for award shows, her words were uttered by Oscar winners and fancy people with great clothes. She's a Moth StorySlam winner, and she's performed with Risk, Story Collider, Sideshow, Goshko, and The Liars Show. She teaches for the Story Studio. They have something coming up soon, which we'll learn more about after her story. Please welcome Gail Thomas.
It's August 2009. It's a bright, sunny morning in Brooklyn. I walk down the steps from my apartment to catch a cab. Normally, I would ride my bike, but I can barely walk. It's a few days after my hysterectomy, and it's time for my post-op appointment. This is when my young, good-looking doctor is going to shake my hand and tell me, congratulations, we got all the cancer. I get to his office. It's small, and he's wearing a button-down shirt and khakis. He looks more like a teacher's assistant than a gynecological oncologist. He doesn't shake my hand. He shuts the door, motions for me to sit, and begins pacing behind his desk. I wish he would just sit still. Mrs. Thomas, he begins, it's serious. The cancer has spread from your uterus to your ovaries. I don't know if we got it all. I don't want to give you false hope. False hope? I'm like, that's an oxymoron. Hope is not false. It continues, I don't say anything. Mrs. Thomas, it's stage 3 metastasis. If you don't do exactly what I say, you have a 50-50 chance of being alive in 5 years. Mrs. Thomas, I'm not married and my mom's not there. And this guy just took my uterus, my fallopian tubes, and my ovaries out of my vagina. I think we can be on a first-name basis. He continues with all these statistics and all these numbers. He tells me that I have to start radiation immediately, 6 weeks, 5 days a week, followed by 6 cycles of chemotherapy. He calls it protocol. It sounds like a threat. I finally say, I'd like a second opinion. And he says, okay, as long as you start treatment first. That's not how second opinions work. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but I've done some research, and research says that you should actually not start treatment immediately after surgery. Again, I'm not a doctor, but I'm a lawyer, and I like research, even though I hate confrontation. And research also says that what's protocol 1 year can be over treatment the next. I have other reasons to be cautious about this guy. I have a fever that is so high, I can't even sleep at night. And there's so much drainage coming out of my body that when I walk my dog at night, I still go through my adult diapers. I can't even make it half a block. And I woke up during surgery. I could hear him yell at somebody. She's not supposed to be that bloated. And then I fell back down. I never told him that, but I asked him about side effects, which he does not want to talk about. So I just walk out of there in a daze. I walk through this waiting room, which has all this dingy furniture, which I never noticed before. I'm thinking, did I just pick this guy because he's good looking? I've made that mistake before. But I don't have time to cry. I have to give myself a medical degree overnight. My family is asking me all these questions, what they're supposed to do. I don't know. I've never had cancer before. So Dr. Google tells me about side effects. They include neuropathy, lymphedema, nausea, uncontrollable flapping eye movements. That's from the nausea medication. I'm a crazy mad Googler by night, but I try to be a good patient by day. So I go to the radiation simulation appointment and I lay down on that cold steel table while the nurses and the technicians measure my pelvis for this mold that's going to put radiation to my body 30 times. And they give me these little tattoos in a triangular shape, zit, 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 just to target the radiation and make it sure it goes to the same place 30 times. It doesn't feel right, but I tell myself, well, this is the price of living. And then I go into the next room and I meet the radiation oncologist. He stands in the doorway for a few minutes and he looks at me and he looks at my chart and then he looks at me and he looks at my chart like he's trying to decide between the two of us. And then he sits down in a chair about 6 feet away from me and I feel like he's holding my hand. He's got these droopy eyebrows and he says, you know, I've been looking at your chart and there's a chance that you don't have metastasis at all. You don't have advanced cancer. You have 2 primary cancers, both early stage. And if that's the case, you don't need any treatment, no treatment at all. I guess that's why you need a medical degree. 2 cancers is actually good news. And this is real hope. This is not false. I go home and I am energized. I mean, research is fun. I've got a purpose now. I'm asking everybody. My yoga teacher tells me that I should eat a raw onion every day. I won't have friends, but I won't keep cancer. My Dominican handyman stops by with an Elvira plant. And my brother is like Rambo. He's like, do it all, do it all, do it all. Finally, after talking to all these doctors and getting all these pathology reports, I get one that agrees with the oncologist that says I have 2 primary cancers and there's no treatment necessary. So I call up my bully, good-looking doctor and I say, you know, how about this? He says, Mrs. Thomas, your life is in danger. You must start treatment immediately. And then he goes on vacation and I break up with him. By this time, I have found Dr. C, a kind, tall, skinny doctor with white fuzzy hair who looks at me with kind eyes and tells me, you know, Gail, it's your choice. It's up to you. I'll support your decision and we'll do the research together. And he doesn't laugh at me when I ask him what's the least amount of treatment I can do without seeming suicidal. That was 10 years ago. I didn't do any radiation. I did 3 cycles of chemo. I still have those little tattoos as a reminder that I can stand up for myself. I haven't had cancer since then. And on my last visit with Dr. C, I told him that I was starting to tell this story to people. And as he walked out the door, he turned and he looked back at me and he said, I don't usually tell my patients this, but I had cancer too, and if I hadn't gotten a second opinion, I wouldn't be alive today. So I guess he stood up for himself too. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Great job. Thank you.
It's nice to remember it. I'm not always so good at standing up for myself anymore.
Hmm. How do people, you've shared that story before, I know,
Yes,
at some
it's
points.
a,
How do
it's a
people respond?
Well, every audience is different. I mean,
Yeah.
one of the biggest compliments I ever got was when I told it in Austin, and these young guys came up to me and told me they could relate. And I was like, it's a hysterectomy story. So
Right.
I thought that I must have hit the universal theme,
Right.
which is by, so that was, it's fun to share it. People like to say that, I want to inspire people to take care of themselves. So I hope it
Right.
does that.
I mean, in most like basic storytelling classes, we learn, right, that it's never really just about the hysterectomy.
Mm-mm.
It's never really just about the, yeah.
It's words to live by.
Right. I try. I certainly try. I wanted to ask you a question that's not related to your story. Is I saw something online recently
Yes.
that you, I believe, are facilitating something. Can you share with us what that is?
Yeah, well,
Webinar?
Cindy Freeman, who's the senior storyteller at Story Studio, is facilitating, and I think I'm going to tell a story and just kind of assist.
Right.
We're just doing like a quick little 30-minute webinar to share a little tidbit, because we want to do some webinars, and Story Studio, which is affiliated with Risk Podcast, has got to get some corporate gigs. So we're going to do a little taste of, but that's this coming Monday. I think it's I can't remember. I think it might be at 1 p.m. Eastern time.
Okay. If you want, go ahead. Yes. Sorry. If you have a link, no pressure, you could drop it in, or people can just search for, what would they?
I will pull up the link.
Yeah.
I can probably pull it up. If I can't, people can direct message me, but I can probably get it.
You can message Gail Thomas, or you can, perhaps if we find a link.
It's on the Story Studio page, but I will, I'll look for it.
And then you can find out about some other classes that they may be running. I know they do some things online, but obviously.
Yeah, we have regular classes running all the time, so I will. Yeah. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Oh, it was wonderful. Thank you for sharing what you did. And for those of you that don't know, Risk is very large. I don't know if is it an organization. It's a podcast, but they now do touring, and they were going to come here to North Carolina before the lockdown. So if you're not familiar,
it's a storytelling podcast that's amazing. It's basically stories that you never thought you'd dare share.
Right.
There's no censorship except that it's really good stories. So, tune in. Maybe I'll try to find a link for that too. I think.
If you go to any podcast host, if that's what they're called, Stitchify or Spotify or Apple, and you put in Risk with an exclamation point, it'll come up.
Yeah.
So they have some really good stories. The other place to go, which some of our other tellers can talk more about, is the Moth. If you go to any of those podcast sites, that'll come up too. They're both fantastic. So thanks again, Gail. Drop the link if you have a chance.
I'm almost getting it here.
No rush. We're good. Cool. All right, let's roll. Let's keep moving forward. So just a quick review here. We were in San Francisco. We hopped over to Vegas. Then we went to New York. And now we are heading up to New England, specifically Boston or south of Boston. Our next storyteller, he is a writer, a storyteller. He's also told for Risk. He is, quote, a celiac warrior. I definitely have a question about that. A Blue Jays fan and a senior writer in residence at Emerson College. Please give it up for our fourth storyteller this evening, Mr. Jon Papernick.
I would be remiss if I didn't correct you. It's Papernick, but that's okay. You're on mute, but maybe you should say...
I stand corrected. I apologize. I didn't do my job. Fair enough.
So you want to grill me on being celiac?
After your story.
All right. Well, I do want to say great story, Gail. And Gail was actually the first storytelling teacher I ever had. My wife and I went down to New York before we were married, and we took a weekend workshop with Gail, and it was amazing. And now my wife is addicted to storytelling, and I have complicated feelings about storytelling, but we love Gail. Yeah, thanks. So I've always wanted to be a writer. Since I first learned how to read, I've wanted to be a writer. When I was 22 years old, I was working in a bookstore, small bookstore in downtown Toronto where I grew up. that was as close as I could be to writing. Just being around the books, I kind of felt like that was the best I could do at that point. And one day, an invitation came into the shop that Margaret Atwood, the most famous writer in Canada, somebody who we've all read in school, and some of us have even read for fun, was throwing a party for her husband, who was launching a new book called Gentleman Death. And I went up to my boss and I said, I have to go to this party. I have to go. I want to be a writer and I need to meet Margaret Atwood. And after a little bit of negotiating, it was agreed that I could have that ticket to go to this party, and I was even going to do it off the clock. So on a warm summer day, when in my 22nd year, I showed up in this backyard garden party in downtown Toronto, this ivy-covered house near the University of Toronto, wearing my very best cut-off shorts and t-shirt. And I showed up there feeling very nervous, not knowing what to expect. I'd never met a writer before. You know, growing up, I always thought that in order to be a writer, you need to be dead. And here's one of the greatest living writers, and I'm in her backyard. And I arrive in the backyard, and I see all these, you know, a who's who of literati in Canada. You know, people whose books were on my parents' bookshelves. You know, poets, playwrights, everybody. And I didn't know what to do. I kind of, you know, walked over to this circle of people, and I kind of encountered this big wall of backs. No one really paid any attention to me. I didn't really know what to do. I had no place there. I was probably the youngest person by about 20 years, and I was really feeling like an imposter. But the drinks were free, so I went and had a drink, maybe a double. And as I drank that down, I started to feel a little bit more confident, a little better about being there. Because the fact is, I had an in. My father worked at a camp in Northern Ontario when he was younger with Margaret Atwood. At the time, my dad was a sailing instructor, and Margaret Atwood was known as Peggy Nature. And my dad had said, when you meet Margaret Atwood, tell her I say hi. So I was just waiting for my opportunity to speak to her and drop my trump card and say, my dad knows you. So I had my drink and continued to feel this incredible sense of alienation. You know, there was nobody that was even paying me any attention. But finally, the man who was being feted, her husband, came over to me. He was a skinny, older man, bald with a white beard, kindly man. And he came up and he started talking to me. And I don't think I'd ever felt more grateful in my life to have somebody speak to me. Because again, I felt totally invisible before that. And we started talking, and I said how I wanted to be a writer. And he had talked about how when he had first started writing, he had written a manuscript and passed the novel on to a teacher of his. And the teacher had handed him back a tiny slip of paper about this size of a fortune cookie fortune, saying this sentence is the only sentence that shows that you have any talent as a writer. And I thought that was really cool, because now here we are, he's publishing a book. And it's not his first book either. He's published a number of books. Interestingly, this book is about an older, struggling writer married to a much more successful writer, having trouble writing a novel. And the novel is called Gentleman Death. So there I am talking to the author of Gentleman Death. And I do take that piece of advice rather kindly, because again, I feel that I couldn't possibly be that bad. At least I get a Post-it note worth of writing that people would think shows I have talent. And suddenly, out of nowhere, Margaret Atwood appears before me. And I'm thunderstruck. I'm so nervous, but there she is in front of me, and she's much smaller than you'd imagine. She has this very strange look about her. Her eyes kind of spiral in this kind of kaleidoscopic way. I'd only seen that one other time in my life, which was a couple years later when I met Yasser Arafat in the Gaza Strip, but that's a whole other story. And Margaret Atwood comes up to me, and I introduced myself, and I said, my dad says hi. And she says, who's your dad? And I tell her, and she looks at me and she says, I don't know who he is. So I repeat the name and I pronounce it properly. And I say, my dad says hi. And she has no idea. So what are you? Are you a writer? And I said, actually, I am. And she says, well, do you have your manuscript with you? And this is the moment I've been waiting for my entire life, to be recognized by Margaret Atwood. I mean, she didn't know my dad, big deal, but she's asking about me. And it just so happens I have my manuscript sweating against my back in my backpack. And I said, yeah, I do have my manuscript. And she looks at me, and this is one of the most devastating things anyone has has ever said to me. She says, "Of course you do." And she spun on her heels and she walked away. So there's only one thing left to do, and that is have another drink because it's free. So I have another, and I probably have another. And again, I just feel completely lost, but I can't leave yet because I built this up so much. I'd never met a real writer before. There's a future Booker Prize winner standing there. There's all kinds of famous writers, and maybe eventually I'll get the balls to go and talk to one of them. And suddenly I see a young girl around my age. She's blonde hair, kind of curly blonde hair down to her shoulders, blue eyes. And she comes over to me and she says, "Hi, how are you?" And I say, "I'm fine." I'm thinking, now that you're here. And we start to talk, and we really kind of get along. We start talking about books and everything. And I feel like maybe I do have a place here finally. And suddenly, out of nowhere, again, I see Margaret Atwood's head kind of periscope up from a crowd of people. The bloodhound scenting her prey. And she says, "Jess Atwood, it's time to drive your grandmother home." And before I know it, Jess Atwood is gone forever from my life. But Atwood comes over to me, and here's another chance to talk to the great writer. And she says, "I see you've met my daughter." And I say, "Yeah, she's really interesting. We really she's only 16 years old." And she turns around, and she spins on her heels, and disappears again. Now, at this point, I'm feeling kind of defeated. But I'm 22 years old, and the drinks are free, so I have another drink. Now, at this point, I've had about 4 drinks, and I'm feeling pretty good about myself, but I decided it's really pointless to try and talk to any of these other writers. So eventually, one of these writers will publish one of my books about 10 years later. But it's time to go. But I have to go to the bathroom. I mean, there's only so much that you can carry. So I leave the garden party and go into the house, which is kind of lit with nice smelling candles, and there's a wooden floor and kind of nice art on the walls. And I find my way into the bathroom. I get in there, I close the door, I take a deep breath. It'll be okay. If you didn't kill me, I'm still here. Still got a chance that I could be a writer. And I open the toilet seat, and I see next to it, there's also a cat litter box. So there's a toilet and there's a cat litter box. And, even though I'm 22 years old, I'm also a 12-year-old boy, just like all of you are. Anyone out there, Richard or David or anyone, Sean, you've all been 12-year-old boys before. And a secret for all the women out there, you probably know this, we're always 12, permanently 12. So growing up in Canada, there's a thing that we do in Canada when it snows, big snowbank, you'll take out your thing and you'll, kind of leave your signature on the snow. You'll pee all over the snow. And this is my moment. I'm thinking, she didn't remember my dad, but I could leave my mark here. I could leave my name for her to remember. I could leave my dad's name for her to remember. So she will always know that I was there. So I peed in the cat litter box, and I was never invited back. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Papernick. Wow. Okay. I wasn't expecting that ending, but I guess any great ending is often unexpected in some ways, right? Of course.
I had no choice. It feels to me like it was the only possible.
Yeah, of course. Of course it was. Now, do those 4 words, "of course you do," sting to this day like few other words have stung?
Yeah, they're pretty bad. I've met some other nasty older writers who have been cruel to me as well, but that was the pinnacle.
Yeah.
And about 8 years later, I did publish my first book, and I got a full-page review in the New York Times. And it was the review was done by the son of Canada's other great writer, Mordecai Richler. So I felt vindicated, but it still stings. There's always be somebody who's going to denigrate you and make you feel you're not worth it.
Always.
But I've gone on to read some of Atwood's books since then, and I do appreciate them. She is an excellent writer, but I dare say not a good human being.
I don't know if this is really relevant, but I looked at you as more of like a 14, 15-year-old. So I don't think 12 is... I don't think you're doing yourself any justice. Let's be reasonable about it. Okay. By the way, when you're in a story and you say something like Yasser Arafat, but that's a different story, and you're begging me to now ask about that at some point, not now, but maybe afterwards or another day, because it sounds...
I should tell that as a story one day.
You can tell it as a story.
I did tell. I'll tell that as a story one day.
Of course you will. Of course you will. We won't talk. If you can hang on afterwards, I also want you to share with us the storytelling series that you had going for a little while.
Sure, if you buy me a drink, I'll do anything.
I will buy you a drink, and I think it was called Doing It in Public. I'll leave it there so it whets people's appetite. And if they want to hang on after, you'll tell us more?
Sounds good.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Jon. Great job. Let us move on. Let us move on to, for this lovely evening. We have had 4 storytellers. We're hopping back to New York now. Our next storyteller is both storyteller and story coach. Her true stories have been broadcast on NPR, the Moth Radio Hour, and on the Risk and Story Collider podcasts. And we will put a link to her website where you can find out more. Please welcome Tracey Miller Segarra.
Hello, hello. Good to be here. Number 5. I am the 4th of 5 children, so 5 has figured greatly into my life. So growing up, the person I most admired and wanted to be like was Lori Partridge from the Partridge Family. You remember Lori, long dark hair. Everybody loved Lori. Unfortunately, the family member I most resembled was her younger brother, Danny. Short, funny looking, wisecracking. Nobody really much wanted him hanging around. Well, that was me. I didn't feel like I fit in my crazy big family, and I certainly didn't feel like I fit in at school. I really didn't have a lot of friends. I was an awkward kid. The first time where I really felt at ease with myself was when I was 14 years old and I got high for the first time, smoked a joint. And when I felt that euphoria going throughout my body, I was in love, and all I wanted was more. And I chased that feeling for many, many years. You know, by the time I graduate college, I've gone through the dictionary of drugs, from amphetamines to quaaludes and everything in between. Pretty much, if you were doing something and you didn't fall down dead next to me, I said, all right, I'll take one of those. Now, the only drug I did not use was heroin, because everybody knows that if you use heroin, you're a drug addict. And I'm not a drug addict. I'm a recreational drug user. Well, it's now a few years after college. It's 1988, and I am living in Manhattan, in this dark Manhattan apartment that only gets light from like 1 o'clock to 1:20 every afternoon. Other than that, I'm staring at a brick wall. And my life is not going so well. I'm in this miserable job as a secretary. I'm living with my boyfriend, who is a 4th-year medical student, and I absolutely adored him. But there are some red flags that maybe this relationship is not going to last. Like, he says he doesn't love me, and he's never going to love me. But I stick around with him. And, you know, so we're going on, and you know, now that I'm a few years after college, and he and I have been getting high together, right now, he is actually, for his last semester of medical school, he is away overseas. So I'm in this apartment alone. And over the last year or so, I've started doing this new drug, which I didn't do in college because I couldn't afford it, and it's called cocaine. And unlike all the other drugs that I've been doing, which I could pretty much take or leave, although I took them a lot more often than I left them, cocaine is a whole nother ball game. Cocaine talks to me. Cocaine whispers things like, you can do another line or two. That's not going to stop you from going to sleep and being able to go to work the next day. Or you definitely should meet this guy at the bar across the street and start doing his cocaine all night, a Colombian coke dealer, and then invite him back to the apartment where you are currently living alone, let him in there and do his coke all night, which is what I've been doing. It's now April of 1988. I've been telling this stranger my entire life story. It's 10 o'clock. My sister's wedding is the next day, and I realize I gotta get this guy out of there. I gotta get some sleep. I gotta get my shit together. So I get this man out of my apartment without being raped or killed, so yay me. But now I'm here in my apartment alone. And if any of you have ever done a stimulant like cocaine, you know there is no way I'm gonna go to sleep for hours and hours and hours. So the only thing I can do is to turn on the television. It's the 80s, that's all I have. So I turn on the TV, and at one point, this commercial comes on. Those of you who are a little older will remember. There's a guy, and he's got an egg, and there's a frying pan, and he cracks the egg in the frying pan. This is your brain. This is your brain on drugs. Any questions? And for years, I have been getting high in front of this commercial with my friends, laughing at this commercial. But for some reason, this morning, I'm not laughing, because it suddenly dawns on me that he's talking about me. And I get scared for the first time in my life. For many years, I've been telling myself, you know, I know I'm going down this wrong path. I'm doing maybe a little bit too much, you know, pot or a little cocaine, you know, maybe it's a little too much, but I'm going to double back. I'm going to start over, and I'm going to start doing what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. But on this morning, for the first time, I get scared. I get scared that I'm not going to be able to find my way back if I keep doing what I'm doing. So I do something completely out of character for me. I call the number at the end of that commercial. And I get this guy on the phone, and for some reason, I'm just totally honest with him. I tell him, you know, my boyfriend's going to be leaving me, and I'm in this miserable job, and my life is a mess. And I remember at one point he tells me, you know, I ask him, I say, what do people do for fun if they don't get high? And I honestly didn't know. I really didn't. It was an honest question. And so he starts telling me about this party, this fellowship that every year on New Year's Eve, they have this party. And one year it got really raucous. And a neighbor called the police. And somebody at the party was like, oh shit, the cops are here. What are we going to do? Until somebody else looked at them and goes, what do you mean, what are we going to do? Flush the cookies down the toilet? And when he told me that, I laughed, you know, and it was the first time I laughed like that in a long time. And he convinced me to go to this meeting. And I knew nothing about meetings or recovery. And even though I hadn't slept, I'm like, all right, I'll go to the meeting. But my next problem is, what am I going to wear to this meeting? Because there's going to be drug addicts at this meeting. And I'm not a drug addict, but I want to fit in, you know? So I wear this ratty t-shirt, jeans, you know, I haven't slept all night, so I figure that'll be good. And I get to this meeting, and I walk in, and I don't know what anybody says, but I sit down, and something comes over me just listening to these people. And I feel something that I haven't felt in, I don't know, maybe ever, which is that I feel safe. I feel like, I don't know why or how, but I feel like these people can help me. And so I keep going to these meetings. And a few months later, they invite me to go to this retreat. It's for recovering people, and it's upstate New York in Pauling, New York, and there's like these dorms, and there's this lake, and there's terrible food, meetings around the clock, and it's amazing. It's amazing, and I love it. And at one point during the weekend, one of my new friends, Tony, says, come on, Tracy, let's go paddle boating on the lake. So we go paddle boating on the lake, and it's a beautiful sunny day. And as we're paddling around the lake, I suddenly look up at the sky, and I say, wow, you know, this is beautiful the way it is. Like, I don't need to get high to enjoy this. And Tony looks at me, and he's like, yeah, duh. But to me, it's a revelation. And 9 years later, I get married in front of that same lake. And I get married there because I eventually meet my husband at another one of these retreats. At this point, he's still in the Bronx somewhere smoking crack. But eventually, he finds his way back in the rooms. We meet. And so I want to get married there because that's where we met. But also because I'm starting this new chapter in my life. And I want to start it in a place where I feel like I fit into the world for the first time. Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy.
That's it.
That's more than enough. Thank you for sharing that. Wow. I'm pretty open about my past, and I know what those conversations are like very well, those conversations with cocaine. And they are, what was it? Did you say whisper? Was that the word you used?
It whispered to me. It told me things.
Is that how you heard it? Yeah, I heard it too. It wasn't always a whisper. It was louder than a whisper, but maybe a loud sotto voce whisper. I don't know. Well, it's so
interesting. And the coke dealer told me that his cocaine wasn't addictive.
Of course not. Right. No, okay. It's interesting because, and I'm sure I'm not, there's many people out there like this, but I always said the same thing. I said, but I don't do heroin. I said, if I don't do heroin, I mean, I knew I was lying to myself, but to me, it was like a different, for me, we don't have to make this a show all about drugs, but I remember thinking to myself, often, if I'm not injecting something in my arm, if it's not a needle, then it's not as bad.
Well, I also didn't know that you could snort heroin. I probably would have done that.
Right.
I'm glad I didn't know that.
You caught a break there by not learning it that early. It's such an interesting, the way it just happened to work out and the way you crafted your story, and that you met somebody through that same thing and got married there. Really beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Real quick, I'm also curious, are you okay sharing, you're doing some work related to COVID right now? Is that right?
I am. I'm a contact tracer for the state of New York.
So what does that mean?
That means everybody who's diagnosed with COVID-19, the information is given to the health department, and the health department contacts them and finds out all the people that they've been in contact with since 2 days before they started showing symptoms. And then they give that information to contact tracers, and then we call them, all the people who have been in contact, and we make sure that they quarantine, and then we check up on them each day to make sure that they don't develop it. So it's trying to stop the spread.
So, and have you started that? So you are on the phone calling these people?
I have. It's like my friends are calling me Tracey the Tracer. But it's like being a disease detective, and it's, I mean, and it's interesting being a storyteller. I think having empathy and being able to listen to people, and I mean, because it can be a very scary thing to get that call and hear that. So.
Are most of the people receptive to you, or is there some pushback?
They are, and sometimes you have to talk through an interpreter because they don't speak English. So,
sure.
But, yeah, no, it's very fulfilling. I got laid off in April after 11 years, so this is
I'm glad
this is what I'll be doing for the next year, and I'm actually very happy that I found.
Yeah, that's a job I didn't know existed, and it's not my field, and I didn't know what it is.
It used to be done by the health department, but because of the pandemic, they need a lot of people to be fanning out and finding everybody who's been in contact with people.
Yeah, well, great stuff. Before we move on to our 6th storyteller, and I'm glad it worked out that you're number 5. I didn't know that was your kind of lucky number. Mm-hmm. Are you teaching any moth-related workshops, or you were recently?
Not the Moth. I mean, the Moth is where I got my start, but I have my own.
I didn't know. My apologies. So it's your own thing.
Yes, I teach storytelling. I just finished doing a 6-week Zoom workshop, and now I'm doing my first advanced storytelling workshop, which is we'll just be working on stories for 6 weeks, and that's starting in July. And all the information is on my website, TraceySegarra.com.
And I put that in the chat for folks. So if you want to check out more about her workshop or anything else related to that kind of work, check it out. Thanks again, Tracey. Appreciate it. Great job.
Sure.
Let us move down to the mid-Atlantic part of this fine country. Our next storyteller tells stories in D.C., Maryland, and the Virginia area. He gets around. And he's told stories for shows such as The Moth, The Story Collider, Better Said Than Done, and Mistakes Were Made, as well as The Perfect Liars Club. I've never told a story there, but I'm sure I could, given its name. In addition to telling stories, he's hosted storytelling shows for Better Said Than Done and the Armed Service Art Performance, ASAP, both online and in person. He is currently hosting a stand-up comedy show, Clean AF Comedy Show, every Friday night on Facebook. And he has a blog called Storytelling on Purpose. Both of those links we will put in the chat. Please welcome our 6th storyteller this evening, Nick Baskerville. Whoop, whoop.
Thank you, and thank you. I have this level of frustration that I can't even really find words for it, to be honest with you. I'm sitting in traffic in Denver, Colorado. It is 1995. It's early into the summer, about midday, and I am trying to make my way onto the highway, but I can't. There's traffic everywhere, and all that I hear is the honking of horns, the colorful expressions people are using, the sun's in my eye, and there's this idiot who has stalled his car in the middle of the traffic area and no one can get by. I'm that idiot. I'm the person who stalled his car. I'm the reason for it. I try to blame the car because they've got two pedals and how do you know which one to push? And they've got the little stick there and it's always kind of hard to get in there. But let's be honest. Okay, I'll be honest. It's all about me. And I should have seen this coming. All I want to do is check this off my box, driving a car on my way to being an adult. In 1992, I graduate from school. I'm actually a military dependent, so we're in Germany. And so I come up with a list of things that I'm going to do to show that I'm adult and that I'm grown up. And one of them is to drive a car. So I go and I make my first attempt at getting my driver's license. I sit down to take the test. I said first attempt. I made 2 attempts. Neither one of them worked out. But I'm 17, and I figured, well, if I'm 17, technically I'm not really grown. So maybe I need to wait until I'm more grown up, more adult-like, and then I can really work on this. I'll find some other things. But that also leaves the fact like, well, what do I do in the meantime? How do I get to be more grown up? So I do something that was really common for a lot of the kids that were my age and there. I joined the military. And so once I've done that, I make my way to Texas, and then to Mississippi, and then to my first duty station. And that first duty station is 35 miles south of Tokyo, Japan. Now in the military, you get this person called a sponsor. And so when you get there, they help you figure some things out. And I met my sponsor. His name is Aaron. Aaron is about my height and weight, white guy, dark hair, and he has this smile that says, yeah, anything's possible. And so it's with this idea, and now that I'm fully 18, that I figure I can do that grown-up thing of driving. And so he helps me study, and I get it. I passed the test, and this is fantastic. And now I'm driving, and I'm getting it. And then there's an abrupt stop. Well, actually, the police officer called it an auto accident. I referred to it as a stop. No one was hurt. No one was in the car because the car was parked. It was a parked police car. It was the only car in the entire parking lot, to be honest with you. And the police officer has this look on his face like, I can't believe you did that. And I have a look on my face that I can't believe I did that. So I look at Aaron and he's like, anything's possible. And so I think to myself, you know, maybe yet still I'm not ready. I'll put this driving a car thing on hold. And after all, it's Japan and their transportation system is phenomenal. And that works. Until I get my next duty assignment. It's in Denver, Colorado. I'm sorry, in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And where my barracks is and where I have to work is like 30 to 45 minutes. I have to drive now. So I go to the base, there on base, they had a place to buy cars. And I buy myself a 1995 Geo Metro. Now, I'm not sure how many people are familiar with this type of car. It is, so if you take a regular sized car and cut it in half and then put a hatchback on it and then smush it, that's my car. That's the one I got. And I have ordered it and I've sent it. It's going to be delivered in Colorado Springs. Interesting fact, you don't actually have to have a license to buy a car. And you may think, well, why would I buy a car if I didn't have a license? So one of the things the military taught me that is helping me grow up is that I understand that I make deadlines. And so now there's a deadline to have a license to go get this car that I am now paying money for. So I get to Colorado Springs and I pay a guy to be able to teach me, and he's showing me the moves and the sticks and everything else. And we do all the driving and I meet with him and I'm finished. I finished early. So the car's not ready. I don't want to lose my skills. So I borrow my friend's car. Well, he's not a friend. He's a roommate. He happens to like someone that I know. And so he's willing to let me use the car because he thinks he's getting closer. He has really no shot, but I don't tell him that. I am getting warmed up and ready to go. And this all accumulates in this moment that I am sitting in my car on a summer's day in 1995, and it has stalled twice because when I was practicing the second time, I used an automatic. And that's probably problematic when you decide that you want to drive a stick. So I take a deep breath, despite the noise and the sun and everything else. And I do something with my feet and turn the key and it moves. And so I just jammed the gas and we get into the highway and I'm going as fast as I can. Well, I mean, it's 3-cylinder, so fast is relative, but it's still moving. And I go and it takes me probably another 20 or 30 minutes because instead of coming to a complete stop, I normally just take right turns or I go into parking lots and drive in circles so I don't actually have to stop the car. And I finally, I make it there and I get better finally at using the stick. And even nowadays, I mean, I've driven everything from that Geo Metro to a pickup truck and to now I even drive a fire truck. Turns out though, even if you drive all that stuff, you may not actually get to be grown up. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Bringing it from the Mid-Atlantic. Thank you, Nick.
Sure.
So how are your driving skills now?
They're much better.
Yeah.
Because wrecking a fire truck, that's a lot more money and a lot more people that you have to explain things to. So I've definitely gotten better.
Indeed. Indeed. Wait, is somebody cooking something there and are they making stuff for all of us? I want some of that food. What's going on in there? That was great. That was a really interesting story. What year were you in Japan? What year was that?
So I was there, let's see, 92 is when I graduated. So 93 to 95.
Ah, okay. I ended up doing I taught English there for a couple of years, but I missed you by a little bit. I always wonder when people tell stories about a place that I was in way back in the day. Like, I might have been seeing that. I obviously didn't know that then, and you would have never known that you were going to tell a story about that and me being here. It's possible, but in this case, not quite. You never know. So before we move on to our final storyteller of the evening, you have Clean AF. I think I know what that means. Comedy show Fridays, and that's on Facebook. Is that something that's Facebook Live?
Yeah. So we have a Facebook group. So me and 3 other friends of mine, we're all clean comedians, and so sometimes trying to find a place to be able to do comedy where it's just, we want people to be able to listen with their kids or whatever. And so it wouldn't matter who was in the background or whatever.
So anybody could watch it and there's no issue. Got it.
Yes.
All right. And then I put the link to that group in the chat. And I also put Stop 365. What is that?
Yeah. So storytelling on purpose. So one of the things that I did is when I got into storytelling, I went to the Moth and I was like, man, this is phenomenal. And someone was like, that's great. If you like this, there's another show over here. So I'll go to that show. I was like, man, that's phenomenal. And like, if you think that's great, there's another show over here. And I was like, well, where is one place for me to find like all of these shows? Mm-hmm. And at the time there wasn't there. And so I created a blog as a way to really kind of track the shows in our area. So DC, Maryland, and Virginia. And so, I mean, and anywhere in those places or states. So I've gone all the way down to the Western or Eastern Maryland and down in Southwest Virginia and wherever I can find storytelling to kind of let people know that this is where it's at and you can go there. And obviously now that we're in quarantine and COVID-19, the thing that I've been doing is just been posting from everywhere, because then what I start to think about is how can I help introduce people from DC, Maryland, and Virginia to storytelling places all across the world, and then vice versa. People from all across the world come down and kind of see what we do in the DMV areas.
Beautiful. So if you want to check that out, we put that link in the chat so you can, Stop Storytelling on Purpose, 365.blog. Got it. Thank you very much, Nick. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Our final storyteller this Tuesday evening is an award-winning elementary school teacher. I definitely have a question about that. He's also a columnist, internationally best-selling author of several novels, including Memoirs of an Imaginary Friend and 21 Truths About Love. I have questions about that. As well as the nonfiction title, Storyworthy, Engage, Teach, Persuade, and Change Your Life Through the Power of Storytelling. I read that book. It is powerful. He is a 48-time Moth StorySlam and 6-time GrandSlam Champion, whose stories have been featured on the Moth Radio Hour and This American Life. He's the founder of Speak Up, a Hartford-based storytelling organization. He teaches public speaking and storytelling around the world to corporations, universities, politicians, advertising agencies, the clergy, and more. Without further ado, our final storyteller this evening, please give it up for Mr. Matthew Dix.
Thank you very much, Sean. I like a low bar. Please don't let that make you think that this is going to be any good. It's December 23rd. It's 2 days before Christmas. I'm sitting behind the wheel and I'm trapped in mall traffic. It's the worst, and it's my wife's fault because she has abandoned me. She's abandoned me 2 days before Christmas, and I'm in this car with the two most annoying and despicable people I have ever met in my life. They are my children. Clara is 6 and Charlie is 3. And if you ever meet someone and they tell you that they're beautiful beams of light, they are liars. These are rotten human beings because they are just like my wife. All 3 of them are like anchors attached to my ankle, trying to drag me down, slow me down, and keep me from getting the things that I need to get done. These are people who, when they get into the car, they take their shoes off as if this is some mobile living room because they want to be comfortable. And it sounds fine, but the problem is when you arrive at the place you're supposed to be going and you get out of your car, you're 30 yards ahead of everyone before you realize they haven't even gotten out of the car yet because they're still putting on their damn shoes. These are people who can't leave the house without food of any kind. They think they're like the Donner Party. We're on an 11-mile journey to a farmer's market and we need to pack supplies in order to go there. It's insane. And they talk to everyone. They talk to strangers. They talk to random people on the street. My daughter especially, she is dangerously friendly. And if a mother has a baby, it is a full stop. It is the baby's name. It is when was the baby born. It's was it natural or cesarean? The questions she asks are horrendous. And all of this means that I can't get done what I need to get done. And on this day, I have a lot to get done because it's December 23rd. It is that past the Amazon Prime save your ass buy a Christmas present date, which means I need to go to the mall, the goddamn mall. I have to look at things assembled on a wall, like in some museum, like the regular human beings, and like pick things off the walls that people might want me to wrap and give to them. It's crazy. And now I have to do this, but I've got these kids with me. My wife has abandoned me because she's gone to get a haircut 2 days before Christmas. My wife has short black hair, but her haircuts take 3 hours every single time. There's no dyeing. I can barely tell she's gotten a cut, but it takes 3 hours. And I know why, because I used to get my hair cut at the exact same place. You walk into the salon, the first thing they do is they say, would you like some wine? And I say, no, first it's 11 o'clock in the morning and this isn't a bar. I'm here to get my hair cut. I don't want your wine. So then they offer you water. And I say, sure, I'll have some water. And they take this crystal decanter that has cucumber slices floating in the water. I see this and I think, these cucumber slices mean that somewhere in this hair salon, probably in the basement, there's a refrigerator. And in that refrigerator, there are cucumbers, which means at some point in the morning, someone has to slice these cucumbers, which are 99% water already, so they can be added to this decanter of water, so the water can slightly taste of cucumber. Like, this is a place that does not understand efficiency. I cannot abide by it, but it is where my wife is. And now I am stuck with these children going to the mall, except now we're not going to the mall because I didn't pack food for this 4-mile trek into the world. So now we need to stop because they're hungry, because they're always hungry. So I pull into Panera, hoping that this can be a quick trip. I get out of the car, I wait 5 minutes for everyone to put on their damn shoes. When everyone's shoes are on, we walk into Panera. As soon as I enter the door, I know that Panera is not designed for children. It was not designed by anyone who understands children. The tiles on the floor are all red, except for an occasional tan tile, which means my children leap from tan tile to tan tile to tan tile, threatening the lives of everyone who is waiting to get food. And so I look at my kids who are hopping around and I say, go find us a table. And so they go. Finally, I'm rid of them for a moment and they're gone and I'm waiting in line. When I get called up to place my order, I know I'm in trouble right away. It's one of those cashiers that have deer in the headlights because they're new. They're like terrified about every single thing they do, and I know they're gonna make my life hell. It's a young woman, and I place my order, and things are going okay. And when I get to my daughter's order, Clara, I say, my daughter has a peanut allergy, so could you please mark the slip? And the woman looks at my order, and then she looks up at me and she says, well, nothing on your order has peanuts, so you're gonna be fine. And I take a deep breath. If I had a hatchet, it might be in her head now, but I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt. And I say, I understand what you're saying, but there just might be peanuts back there. Could you just mark the slip? Thank you. And she looks back at the order and she looks back up and she says, no, you don't understand. There's no peanuts anywhere in your order at all. What I want to tell this woman is, listen, stupid person. There's a product in this world that for some reason we have decided to put in everything. and this product can kill my daughter 2 days before Christmas, which would really suck for a lot of reasons. So just put the note on the slip. But I don't do that. Instead, I walk right past her. I go through that little slot that separates me from the kitchen. I go past her into the area right behind her, and I yell to the guys in the kitchen, and I say, "Excuse me, there's a grilled cheese coming back." But before I can get another word out, the manager is in front of me. She looks at me and she says, "Sir," and I say, "No." I say, "This woman right here won't put this thing on the slip, and my daughter's going to die, and my wife will blame me, and I'm not going to allow that to happen because she has a peanut allergy." And to this manager's everlasting credit, she says, "I'm sorry. I'm going to take care of it, but you need to get out of my kitchen." And she's right. I need to get out of her kitchen. I am a crazy person. And so I step back out of her kitchen, and she helps me with my order, and she makes sure everything is fine. And then I turn and I go to the lobby to find my children in the seat they have chosen. And when I enter sort of the dining room area, I scan the room, and then I see my kids in the far corner, and I can't believe what I see. Clara is at the booth, and Charlie is at the booth. And in between them, there is a mother holding a small baby. They have chosen to sit with a complete stranger. And now I must extricate my children from this ridiculous situation that they have created. And as I walk across the dining room trying to think about what I'm going to say, it's as if Clara knows what I am planning. Because when I get close, she says, "She said it's okay, we can have lunch with her. Her baby's name is Hannah. Isn't she cute?" So I look at the woman, and she gives me that smile of resignation, like, "It's all right, we'll get through this together." And so this quick meal is not going to be quick now, which means I'm not going to get to the mall quickly, and everything else is going to be ruined. So I sit down, and I chit-chat with this mother for a moment. I introduce myself. I meet Hannah, the baby. And then at one point, Clara says to the woman, she says, "Where's Hannah's daddy?" And the woman pauses for a second as if she's considering what she's going to say. And then she tells Clara, "Hannah doesn't have a daddy." And Clara, without missing a beat, says, "Oh, are you a mommy family?" And the woman says, "No, it's just me and Hannah." And for the first time, I see this woman. I really see her. I see the slump of her tired shoulders and the lines under her eyes. And I look to the left and I see the carriage, the stuff that I haven't seen for a long time because my kids are a little older. All that plastic paraphernalia that you have to carry into the world now to keep a child alive. The bottles and the diaper bags and the toys and the breast pumps, all of this stuff that you have to throw on your back like a Sherpa every time you want to leave the house. And I look at this woman and I am so angry at Clara for showing me this thing that I need to see. 2 days before Christmas, my daughter and my son sat with a stranger, and that stranger treated my kids better than I have treated them all day. She was actually present and kind, and she listened to my children in a way I had not since the moment we left the house. And I'm so angry at Clara for shoving this lesson down my throat on this day. And so I take a deep breath and I try like hell to put the mall out of my mind and my wife out of my mind, the wife who I complained about because I had to suffer for 3 hours without her while sitting across from a single mom and a baby who seems a hell of a lot happier than me and a hell of a lot more capable than me and a hell of a lot more patient than me. And so I try to have a meal with my kids and be present in the moment as best as I can. And ever since that day, I have not improved greatly. I've improved slightly, but in those moments of real annoyance and those moments where I feel like everyone is trying to pull me down and hold me back, I think about Hannah's mom and how she treated my kids that day. She is the role model that I now have for perhaps treating my children and my wife a little better every day. Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. I appreciate it. I feel like Hannah's Mom is a really good book title. I don't know exactly for what age.
It kills me that I can't remember her name. I remember Hannah, but I don't remember the woman's name.
Oh, but I think Hannah's mom works for me. I don't need to know her name. Anyhow, so would you share, we learned a little bit about you in the intro. Would you share a little bit about your podcast? Because I love your podcast.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. My wife and I host it. It's called Speak Up Storytelling. We produce a show here in Connecticut, or we did. Now we're actually producing shows online now. So every week, theoretically, it used to be every week. Once we had to start distance teaching, my wife is also a teacher, we got off schedule quite a bit. So every week or so lately, we put a story up that we featured in our show, and then we sort of deconstruct that story. We talk about what's working and what's not. There's a segment where I talk about how I find stories in my everyday life, and I sort of explain how a moment from my previous week could be a story or a component to a story to help people sort of find that. And we answer lots of questions, things like that. It's a lot of fun to do. And
forensics.
Yes. Oh, and right. And there are moments when Alicia doesn't want a podcast. I have to give her a week off. And on those weeks, I take a story that I've told at one of our shows, and I go through it and I sort of stop and start it. And I talk about sort of what was I thinking? Why did I make this decision? There are stories where I make terrible mistakes. I make bad decisions, and I point those out. I say, oh, what was I thinking here? So I sort of go through my own stories. And the new thing I'm doing now is I'm actually, because I don't write my stories out, I do everything orally.
Which is astounding, by the way, but that's just an aside.
Well, it's just the way I work.
Hey, it works.
It works for me. Yeah. But because I do it that way, I can actually craft stories in front of people, which is very uncomfortable for me because they don't sound good in the beginning, and I don't really like people hearing me sound poor, but I'm doing that now too on the podcast every now and again.
Right. It's like a think aloud. I'm harkening back to my teaching days here.
Yes, it really is. It's like a think aloud, but it's a long, miserable think aloud where I have I have a list of, story ideas that I've never crafted. So I just choose a random number. So I don't know what to expect. I do it live in workshops. People always love to see me do it in workshops, which I hate doing it, but it's always like the best reviewed thing that I do. So doing it on the podcast was even more uncomfortable because instead of, 50 people, it's, 10,000 people hearing me sound poor, but people unfortunately like it.
You're a brave man. So it's called, if they want to search for it on Spotify or wherever, it's Speak Up Storytelling, right?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, we're about to do our 100th episode in a couple weeks, I think.
Wow. Congrats on that.
Thank you.
Do you have any workshops coming up that are for the public?
I do. I didn't think I was going to do them online, and people convinced me, and I thought they were going to be terrible, and it turns out they're not. They're not as good, but they're very good. Actually, I see a lot of the people who are in my work right now here. So welcome everyone who I know. I do 6-week workshops. So 6 people join me for 6 weeks. And then on July 11th, I sort of have an all-day workshop from 11 to 6. I'm going to take people through the process of the very beginning of crafting a story step by step, so that by the end of the workshop, they kind of have a story ready to go, basically taking them through my process. And I'll also be modeling one of those choose a random number and listen to me craft a story at that workshop as well.
Even though you don't like it, but they like it. It works for them.
Unfortunately, when I send the feedback form back, out, what I get back is always that's their favorite part. So,
hey. Perhaps the most important thing before we sort of formally say goodbye is you wrote a book. You've written several books, and one of them is called 21 Truths About Love. Yes. Now, here I am, a man in his 40s, single. And it's been a hard conversation I've had to have with myself about maybe I really don't know that much about women. And it's maybe it's just serendipity here, but so I'm putting you on the spot. I don't need all 21, but maybe 1 or 2 would be great before we leave.
Sure. It's my latest novel. It's a book written entirely in lists. It is list after list after list that actually tells the story.
Really?
Course of the book. Yeah, it was accidentally written during faculty meetings when I was bored, and somehow it became a book. It really was accidental. I guess, the advice I've been giving people lately in terms of finding the right person is the thing I appreciate about my wife the most is that sort of my worst qualities. I mean, I'm sure you know what your worst qualities are at this point. If you don't,
it's a different conversation, Matt, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, if you don't know those, you probably have some work to do before you can But if you know what your worst qualities are, the best thing about my wife is that she either overlooks them, like genuinely doesn't have to like look past them. She just doesn't see them, or she somehow finds them endearing. And if you can find someone who can see your best qualities as, you know, something that makes you you, that is a really wonderful thing.
Okay, but how?
How to do it? Well, you have to find the right person, essentially.
Basically, what I'm asking you to do, Matt, is maybe be like, I need you to be my dating liaison.
Well, you know, I teach workshops. Storytelling for dating is actually a workshop that I teach because it turns out you can usually get a first date.
Right.
You can't get the second date. It doesn't really have to do with what you look like. It really has to do with what you said on the first date.
Definitely a large component. I agree.
So people just don't say the right stuff on the first. And actually, to be honest, I've never had a woman take my storytelling for dating. It's always been men. I don't feel like women probably need it as much as men do.
Ooh,
yeah,
man, I got to hear the truth here. So I got to hear it.
Yeah.
All right.
Sorry. Cool. Well, read the book.
I'll get the book.
There's a whole list.
And I will say again, and I'm happy to plug away here. Matthew's book, Storyworthy, you can get it on Amazon in any number of formats, is a really, really no bullshit good book with very tangible things. And I do actually think I kind of get your mind a tiny bit because the way you write, you sort of go so granular.
Yeah.
And you really give some good examples. So I appreciated that. So if storytelling's your thing and you want to learn more about it, several of our storytellers have workshops. No doubt they're all good. That particular book I found to be especially helpful. So
thank you. That means a lot.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for. So I want to sort of formally close this out with a huge thanks to our 7 storytellers. So thank you for that. You guys did a wonderful job. And a huge thanks to everybody who came and spent part of their Tuesday evening here with us listening to these stories. I'm going to put in the chat 2 events that we have coming up. Next week, we have this event we've been doing every other week called Story Flash. And it is some of the people on here know it. They've been involved in it. It's a challenging storytelling sort of thing we do in which you get a 1-word prompt, you get a few beats, and you share a true story. It's quite challenging, but thus far it's gone really well. So if that sounds like your type of thing, I'll put a link in there for you. And then the following week, we have a competitive open mic. The theme is struggle. So those are typically around 5 minutes, and there is a winner who gets a prize. So I'm going to put a link to both of those. And that's all I've got. I really do thank you so much. Storytellers, thank you. Audience, thank you. We're going to formally close it out. And then if you want to stick around, talk story, talk whatever you want, I'm going to be here for a little while, and I welcome you to do that. So take care. Have a wonderful night. And you can unmute yourselves right now if you want to.
That was fun.
Thank you all for doing that. You guys were great. I'm going to just try to put my links in here. They're in. And Matthew, if you're still here and you have a link or 2 you want to drop, by all means do.
Oh, sure. I'd be happy to. Thank you.
It's hard to know.
I tell you what, I had fun, but I feel like such a schmuck. Because
Why?
Everyone else is like, I had to overcome, cancer and this and that. And I had to overcome driving a stick. Like,
Nick, hey,
comparison.
We don't want 7 cancer stories. I mean, a little mix is good.
You have no idea.
Dark, little light.
Overcome that.
I still can't even drive an automatic, so.
No, you guys did great. I appreciate it. And if you're here and you have a question for those storytellers that are on here, I think they're open to hearing them. Obviously, don't get super weird about it, but it's all good. I trust you. I see Sharon came on late. Hi, Sharon. James in Chicago. Just sort of calling people out because I didn't have a chance to say hello earlier. Bob in Vegas. Tony in North Carolina. Steph, unmute yourself and say hello. Steph was she won our competitive open mic last week. And I'm not sure, but it may just have been a story that Mr. Dix helped her with, but tell me if I'm wrong. maybe she's not there. That's why we can't see her. She's probably somewhere else doing her thing.
bathroom.
Yeah, it's awkward, but I'll ask her about where she. That's all good.
Dinner.
Right.
Sorry.
Oh, there you are. Okay, what are you just working out while you're?
I did my frickin' Pilates, and now I'm cooking some damn food.
All right. Oh, so we're not the main event for you this evening. We're just the side dish.
Sorry. I watched with bated breath. I watched every single one.
Stephanie, the story that you told at our open mic or slam, call it whatever you want, that one, was that something that you made, or was that part of Matthew's class?
Remind me what it was. I don't
That
remember.
speaks highly of his class if it was. It was relating to God.
It was a woman in your church.
Oh.
Mr. Dix absolutely did help me with that.
He helped you with that one?
Yeah.
Is that when you were doing a drug deal with your old lady church friend?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one, yeah.
It's a great story, Steph. It's great.
Thanks.
It was really
9.6 grade story, and my judges were tough.
It was great.
Yeah, it was really.
Steph sent me a private message tonight that said, Matt, don't suck, which was really a positive way to go.
Very positive.
I said, you better not suck tonight. And I was trying to get all the other people in our class to send him a similar message so that we would just barrage him with messages of don't suck.
They're better people than you are, though.
I know I'm a horrible person, but you were excellent in spite of my
You're a funny, horrible person, so there's that.
I loved
Stephanie,
all the stories. Thank you, guys.
While you're here and in between cooking, do you want to do a quick shout out to your story jam? Just tell us what it is.
Story Jam? Well,
Yeah.
actually, Mr. Dix is going to be featured at Story Jam. We're going to do an online Story Jam. It's a show that combines live lit. So we call it in Chicago, we kind of refer to it as live lit storytelling,
Right.
personal storytelling with music, original music written for each story. So we get the stories ahead of time.
Wow.
And then we write a song. There's a 10-piece band on stage, but we're not going to be able to do that for Matt's show. So we're going to each songwriter who's affiliated with Story Jam, we're each going to take a story from Matt. We haven't picked the stories yet, and it's going to be story song. So hopefully it'll be on storyjamshow.com.
Okay. And is it going to be like is it a live show or?
Oh yeah.
It is.
Yeah, I know. I have a few logistics to figure out. Basically.
I'm still figuring it out. So is that something do you know if you can do that directly from your website, or are you going to use a platform like Zoom or some combination, or do you not know?
We're going to do exactly what you're doing, which is the Zoom thing, and then put it on Facebook Live or what do you call it? I don't know. You see, I have a lot to.
Yeah, I don't. We're all learning this stuff, and most people on here are north of mid-30s. We don't know what the hell we're doing. We're just trying to figure this shit out. Come on.
And what is the date for that, Steph?
It's September 18th. And then actually because I'm now Mr. Dix's new guru, he's my guru now, and I'm following him all over the place. I've gotten him to do, we've convinced him to do a workshop on September 19th. So he's going to do the show on September 18th. It's a Saturday night. And then he'll do like a half day, I think, workshop for storytelling on.
Wow.
He's already doing another one before that. So
is that planned live or so? No, obviously it's not. It's all online.
It's all online.
Yeah.
So so it's a silly question for me to ask, because I'm wondering, like, we might go back to a is she normal-ish, but you can't plan for that, and you have to plan this stuff in advance, obviously. So
yes, thank you thank you for inviting me to speak too. Thank you.
Yes, and if does anybody else have any plugging, you're an audience member here. I will tell you that I've been blessed to find some of the best storytellers in the world. No doubt, like literally. And they're saying yes, but what my challenge is getting enough people to come on to watch. So I'm fine with 30 or 40. It's great, and you are the right 30 and 40. But I'm wondering if anyone wants to share a secret or two here about how I can get a few more viewers. Please let me know.
Yes, if you offer $100 to each person who shows up, I think you'll get more than 30 or 40.
Yep, that's true. That's one way I could do it. And it doesn't really matter, but more because I want more people to be able to know about it and hear these stories. And especially, yes, I know, Nick, your story might have been a little different, so you say, but they were such interesting and compelling. And I've yet to find a word for it, but I'm searching for these kinds of stories. Yeah, they're all true and they're all personal narrative, but they're not heavy necessarily, but they're, what's the word? Help me. Like,
Compelling.
Yeah, someone said compelling. Yes.
yeah, they're all compelling, but you could have compelling fart joke stories too if you're really good.
Just real life.
Meaningful.
Meaningful.
Out loud.
What do you think, Matthew?
Nothing. I'm being stupid.
No, it's all good. I just for the sake of letting people know the kinds of stories that I'd love to try to feature, but it worked out. So that's
one of the things we found for our show is actually if you charge people a little money, they're more likely to show up.
Yeah.
So even if you charged people $5 and donated all of that money to COVID relief, it's that sunk cost that people feel, which is crazy. You should not submit to the sunk cost fallacy. But if people pay $5, they're more likely to go, oh, I got to go watch it because I just paid $5. Where if it's free, they sort of be like, let's go for ice cream instead.
Right.
So,
I've thought about that, and I it's something I should probably try to do. Something most people can afford. Obviously, I don't want to.
You could label it. You could say, $5 just a donation.
Right.
Sure.
Yes.
I mean, if I'm collecting money, frankly, I'd like to give it to the storytellers, but.
Yeah, I know some shows are doing pay what you want as well. It's just the idea that if someone pays something, they're more likely to show up for that thing.
Yes, and I don't think for most people that if it's 5 or perhaps even 10, that would scare most people away. Not everybody, but most.
Right.
I'm Exceed Indie. I'm not going to pay anything.
Bhavana, I'll let you in. Don't worry about it. Bhavana's in Hawaii. You can do whatever you want. Just make
sorry,
sure.
I just tuned in because it's the middle of my day, but I'm in a snazzy loaner car. My new car is getting rust-proofed. Life on the island.
If you ever come to one of our Story Flash events, Bhavana has quickly risen to the ranks of Story Flash superstar. Just jumping in, one-word prompt, and crushing it. So thank you for that. And
when are those again? I want to do one of those.
Who's speaking?
Gail.
Oh, hey, Gail.
A week from tonight.
I have one coming up a week from tonight. I'll send you a link if you want. It's fun. It's very loose. Sharon, who's here, is often I call her the host, but she has another name for herself, Prompt Queen.
Prompt Lady.
Prompt Lady. And I have to say, it was an idea that I sort of borrowed. Actually, Matthew, originally I was doing something similar to your 3, 2, 1.
Yep.
And then I don't remember who it was, said, let's make it harder. And I said, really? Like, that's not hard enough for you? Really? And so we went to this model of we collect a bunch of what presumably are good prompts early on, and nobody gets to see them, one word. And you can pass, but surprisingly, most of the time people aren't passing, and most of those stories are interesting.
Yeah, I find if you give them 3, you can always tell a story.
Right.
I actually use the website perchance.org/object, and it gives you 3 random objects. And
nice.
I use that when I play by myself, which I do a lot now because people don't like to play with me anymore.
Oh, man. If anybody wants to play with Matthew.
Yeah. Well, it's a good way to spend time in a faculty meeting when you realize you shouldn't be in this meeting anymore because nothing pertains to you. I just pull that website up. I get 3 random nouns and I come up with a new story in my head while someone else is talking. It looks like I'm busy, but really I'm just crafting a new story.
Matthew, you realize that when I look at your introduction, and I knew this, I don't know you, we've never met, but I know of you, just this is how the world works with the storytelling stuff. It's astounding, like when you read the stuff that you're doing, and then you just add, and I'm a teacher, you say, this guy has 38 hours in his day. And it's really like, what do you...
My next book is actually a book on productivity and how to get stuff done. And so that book's coming out next year, and maybe that'll be helpful.
Obviously, we all need to go to more faculty meetings. That's
something
key here.
Well, I mean, honestly, that's part of it. Is if you realize a meeting's coming and it doesn't pertain to you, and you don't bring something to do to that meeting to be productive, you're just deciding that an hour of your life is meaningless. And I just see it as really valuable. I have a friend who says, "I'm going to Matt Dix this meeting," which means like, I know there's nothing to do in this meeting, so I'm going to bring something that makes me look busy, but is really personally productive for myself.
But you can do that online quite easily, but offline, not so much, I assume.
I'll read that book.
Well, I wrote 21 Truths About Love in faculty meetings by making lists because it looks like you're listing things like that your principal is telling you, when really you're just listing fiction and writing a book. So,
but it's not fiction, is it? It's not really fiction.
No, well, I mean, there are real people in it that I propose as fictional characters, but it is a fictional story.
Mm.
Yeah.
Jon, I have a question for Matthew. On your story today, there was so much at the beginning which came back to the end again. Would you strongly consider doing a forensics on tonight's story on an upcoming podcast? I love your podcast, and the forensics is my favorite part.
Oh, that's...
And this particular story is complicated enough that it would be a real good example for that, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I have a recording of it.
I'm pretty sure you can get one from Sean Wellington.
That's true. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm happy to send it to you.
I know I've performed it at like a couple corporate events because it's nice and clean. But I don't know if I've actually performed it on a stage yet, but I could get Sean's. Yeah, you're right though. It's very complicated. It's a 5-part story, and all 5 parts. In my mind, the way I tell that story is I have to remember 5 parts.
Mm-hmm.
And if I screw up one of those parts, then I have to do those mental gymnastics, which I hate, which is, crap, how am I going to get that back in?
Right.
But you're right in recognizing it's a complicated story.
Mm.
Yeah. But I told it tonight when we were having ice cream with my kids. I told them the story, and Clara doesn't really remember it, sadly, because now she's 11. So she says, I kind of remember being in Panera and you being mad at me, but I don't really remember much about it other than that, which is a shame.
It's so interesting because the power of crafting stories and telling them, and obviously if you have a stage or a platform on which people can hear it, I can ask you a lot of questions about your life right now that would be weird in any other context. There's no way I should know about this stuff. But you've shared stuff, right? And I know a few other people on here are friends of mine or we meet regularly for stuff. But that's a kind of weird dynamic. An interesting one. I'm glad for it, but a little strange. You know? It's very uneven. You don't know much about me, and I know a lot about you. Well, not a lot.
It's a very one-sided relationship I have with a lot of people. I meet people and they know everything about me, because if you read my blog or listen to my stories, you kind of know my life, and then I don't know who they are. I try to remember what their name is, and they're talking to me about the death of my mother and how it meant something to them, you know.
It's really interesting, yeah. Cool.
Yes, Bob, I'll get a recording, and then I will certainly use it as a forensics.
Nice.
It'll be very useful. It's a complicated story, and I make a lot of careful decisions there.
Good question, Bob. Cool. Richard.
Yes, sir.
So here's the secret. Richard told me he was going to tell one story, and then he told another one. I didn't expect that one. I loved it.
Oh, I thought we had talked about it. I thought.
I loved it. I thought you were telling, and it doesn't matter. It was
okay.
But while you started, I'm like, I'm really into this story, but there was this little voice like, I wasn't expecting this. So great job.
I was.
Okay. You were?
Yeah, he mentioned it in your noontime or your early afternoon workshop is his Mary's story. Maybe you just thought
Mary's story you were
might mean something different to you than it does to me.
I thought you were telling the director-producer story with the moment in which they're supposed to hit the button.
Oh, no, yeah.
This does not make for interesting conversation for people to listen to, so I'll stop. But anyway, great job.
Richard, do you play poker?
I do, but that isn't what I do for a living. Mostly for a living, I'm a blackjack player.
Okay.
So
there was a time when I was sort of playing poker semi-professionally when it was still online.
I know. See, I know you because I listen to the podcast. So I'm one of those people that knows you and you don't.
Right.
Yes. I'm looking forward to the day it's legal online again and I can begin profiting while doing other things.
Did you make money at that, Matthew? Were you, presumably you made some?
I did. I paid for my wedding and my honeymoon and my dog's surgery all on poker winnings. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, if you know anything about it, online at the time when it was legal across the United States, there was a lot of money to be made. There was just a lot of people who didn't know what they were doing.
They didn't know what they were doing, right?
Playing it for fun. You know, I've been to the casino and I've played there too, but it takes a long time to grind it out. You can make a profit, but it's a lot slower when you have to actually sit at a table.
Right. You can play 5 times as many hands per hour or more. I mean, depending if you play multiple tables at the same time online.
Or you could be doing something else. You know, oftentimes I was sort of do it, watching a movie, listening to a podcast, and playing poker all at the same time, and making my wife absolutely crazy. But then I'd say like, well, I made $600, so I mean, and she'd be like, keep doing it, just keep playing.
When did this is for any of you who know this stuff, when did Texas Hold'em become like the game, and why is that the game?
So it really started in the 70s when they started the World Series of Poker, but it didn't really explode until 2003 when an accountant named Chris Moneymaker won the World Series.
I remember
suddenly, boom. I mean, everybody thought, oh, if he could do it,
Right. Well, it was the hole cards too. That was when we could see hole cards, so that changed everything too.
Yes. Oh, because of the camera.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually saw a documentary of some kind about that thing of, I think it was ESPN and the choices they made, one of them being to show the cards.
Yeah.
And they said it was a game changer for the audience. It really did that was kind of a brilliant move.
Because they did have it on TV before that, but when you don't see the whole cards, it's really boring to watch.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Cool. Any other questions for our storytellers?
Just thank you all so much. I wasn't sharing my joy in the chat because I actually had it airplaying to the TV in the other room where I couldn't type. So just an all-in-one thank you. It was really, really an amazing, wonderful evening.
Right, yeah.
Of stories, or for me, afternoon. I'm in LA. Thank you.
Cool. So I hope you guys, if you want. So Gail, yes, I will message you about that event next week. You might enjoy that. It'd be fun to see you.
Yeah, I love
Super
it.
fun. You'll like it. It's very low stakes, just high fun.
High fun, low stakes.
Cool. Thank you very much. It was a great night. I enjoyed it.
I'm glad you shared what you shared. And those types of stories are so,
Well, I like the simple stories too. I mean, obviously, these stories they're just different kinds of stories, but I have a lot of respect for those day in a life ones, man. Those are fantastic. It's what's great about it, right? All stories. It's just a story, any story, as long as you find a thread to follow.
Yeah. Just find a way to say it, a way to craft it that works.
And yeah. Okay.
Easier said than done, but you're all very good at it. So. And by the way, what's up, Sean?
I'm sorry. I'm going to be watching the recording. Where do I find that?
Zoom is doing it as we speak. It's magic. And then I will have a link. And actually, the easiest thing for me to do is just to I'll send you a link at some point in the next day or two. And if anybody wants their specific section, be it audio or video, I just go into iMovie. I don't know much, but I know enough how to just splice those apart and export them. And then I get really confused and I yell a little bit, and then it works out at some point somehow. And then all of a sudden my entire computer's memory is shot. And I just got this computer and like 3 videos. Do you feel me? You're like, come on, man. I just got a computer and 3 videos. I have no memory. Anyhow, my point is I'm glad to get them to you.
It sounds like either this is therapy for you or it's what put you into therapy. I'm not sure which one.
I'm saying it's if you heard the conversation I was having with Matthew, a brief one about my struggles with women, you know that I might be lacking in some areas of my life, including awareness, and it's a struggle, man.
I just want to know what Bob is eating. It looks really good.
Yeah, I gotta go listen.
Especially with the camera angle.
Definitely.
What is that?
Bob?
It is whole wheat pasta from Trader Joe's with some sauce in there and ground up turkey, and it's kind of a go-to thing that both my wife and I can prepare. So it's slow skill, but reasonably nutritious and fast, and you can. That was what it was tonight.
Right. My family just discovered at Costco, they have for Taco Tuesday, they've got like a whole chicken taco fixings that you can buy for a family of 4. It's only $16. And we had that tonight. It's every week. Costco.
Huh.
David, I see you're still on. Do you want to say hi? I'm putting you on the spot a little bit.
Gotta
You
go
might
get
have.
food, you guys.
Bye, Gal. No, it's all good. You guys got to go. It's
I need to run as well. So thank you so much, Sean. Really appreciate
Take care,
it.
Richard. Great job.
Yep. Thanks.
David, I wanted to say hi to you.
Hi, Sean. Thanks for doing this.
See you, Matt.
Bye, Tracy. Thanks again.
Hey, Trace.
Yeah.
Alicia says hi.
Hi, Alicia.
I'm betting Matthew and you and Tracy have known each other for some years.
We have. I remember Tracy's first story at the
Really?
mall. I heard. I remember she got up and she told a story, and I thought, oh, fuck, I'm not going to win tonight.
Do you remember who won?
I think she won that night. I think she did. Yeah.
I did. That was the first time I told the story I won.
Yeah.
I've been there many times when Matthew has won.
I remember that story. I remember where I was sitting, and I remember you getting up and thinking, oh, I do not have a shot in hell tonight.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Where was that? Do you remember?
It was one of those nights I hope they didn't pick me. I was like, oh, God, don't pick me anymore, please. Please, I don't need to be picked
Did
tonight.
you tell a story that night? I don't even remember.
I don't remember. I just remember knowing I wasn't going to win. I don't remember if I got picked, but if I did, I have a record of it, sadly. If you beat me that night, I could go and tell you the date, the time, what my score was, how I felt about my story.
Wow. You're a documenter, that's for sure.
I'm also like so awfully competitive. It's ridiculous. Like I've already beaten you in things you don't even know I'm competing against tonight.
I'm glad that you're winning a lot of those competitions, because if you weren't, it would really suck given how competitive you are.
Well, actually, if I wasn't winning, it's okay as long as I don't mind losing. I like to objectively know where I am at all times. I grew up on video games. I wish the score was above my head at all times, you know?
Yeah. Tracy, do you remember
The story I told tonight, I actually told for the first time at Speak Up when you were at Real Artways. That was
I didn't
the early version.
Yeah, I didn't remember where I'd heard it. Yeah, but it's different. It's different now.
Yeah, I changed it.
Yeah.
Oh, you've changed it since then?
Stories are a living, breathing thing.
Yeah, of course. And so that wasn't a Moth story that you shared at the Moth ever? Or it was?
I actually did share that at a Moth Slam in Portland, Oregon, which I happened to be there for a conference a few years ago, and I told the story.
And you...
I did not win that.
What? They don't know what they're doing over there in Portland, man.
But you know what? It was really nice because the guy who was hosting, because every city has a different flavor.
Yeah.
Those of you who've done the Moth in different cities. And the host afterwards, he had all the storytellers get up and go on the stage. And he said, look at these people and applaud them because they're all braver than most of you would ever be just to get up and tell their stories.
I love that.
Right.
Yeah, I thought that was good.
Right. But the way they do it with those slams, somebody wins. That's how it is. I agree, though. It's not easy to do. So, cool.
Do you guys want to know what I'm eating?
Gosh. I think most of us have been thinking that. What's that, Bhavana?
I'm at the outdoor mall, and I got the family-style egg foo young.
Nice.
Still halfway eaten. If you want to see it, Tracy, I can show it to you.
That's what I think we're good.
Okay.
No, I mean, I don't want to get in the way of... Yeah, I don't want to get in the way. Egg foo young is good.
But it's like eating in someone's kitchen.
Right. It's a little weird. It's a little weird here, but, you know, hey, if people are at home, they're doing their thing. We do weird shit at home. Some of us do weird shit when we're not at home, so...
I'm in this black car. It says courtesy vehicle on it. Isn't that classy or what?
Very much. Hey, Bhavana, so you're gonna be there on Tuesday, right? Along with Gail and I'm sure some other of our regulars.
Next week, Tuesday, are we in July now? Is it like the...
No, that'll be the 30th.
Yeah, that'll be
30th of June.
Yeah, but she's in Hawaii. She's in the future. It could be July there, because
right. Different
I'm
world.
behind you. You tell me how the future looks.
You're gonna come next week. Stephanie might be there. Nick might be there. I know because you've come before. So if you can, it would be great.
We'll be there.
Cool.
6 hours behind you, Matthew. Where are you, Matthew?
Huh?
Where are you?
I'm in Connecticut. You are ahead of me.
No, I'm behind you 6 hours, so you could win something.
Yeah.
Oh, you are?
He's way behind us.
And then you already won. Like if we do like a contest and let's pick one time, 3 o'clock, you'll win for sure because I'm 6 hours behind. You've already won.
You're right. You shouldn't even bother showing up.
Don't come.
Yeah.
No, 21.
So Anna, who's here, I know is in Singapore, but she's ahead. So, oh, she's over the date line. That's what it is, right?
Anna.
And Anna's, she's.
Oh, yeah. Singapore's like 13 hours, 12 hours ahead.
12. It's 12. She's in my workshop. So when we're doing it at 8 o'clock at night, she's 8 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
She's a day ahead, I guess, because she's over the date line. Is that what the deal is? I don't know how.
I don't know. Yeah, well, I suppose. I don't know. It doesn't. I don't know how it works.
Yeah.
You would think I would, given the travel.
Right. I don't think Anna's actually here right now. I think she's just sort of lingering.
Right. Some people do that. They leave. They forget.
Great storyteller.
Is she?
Yeah, she's great. She's really wonderful.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's cool. And she wants to get greater, or she wouldn't be in your workshop.
She actually hosts a show in Singapore as well. But there's not a lot of storytelling in Singapore, and there's not a lot of the culture doesn't afford for vulnerability as much as it does here. So she struggles with that, finding people to embrace the thing.
I think there's a fair number of cultures who that's really not their thing. A big chunk of the British Isle areas, they're not so quick to be vulnerable on stage. It takes time for them. It's different, generally speaking.
Republicans too.
Yes. Here we go. Here we go.
Certain Republicans too.
I'm glad to go there, but if anyone needs to vent, I know that I'm pretty sure everyone here is really left-leaning, so no one's going to get upset, but hey.
Yeah, well, I'm a lean just because I'm in the D.C. area, and you're probably not going to find a new area as you talk about this. Not that I disagree. But I did want to say, Steph, if you're listening, I love your podcast there, that whole fusion of music and the story. That's phenomenal. Matthew, I've been listening to your blog. I mean, not your blog, but your podcast for a while now. I have like an hour and 15-minute drive to work. So it's one of the blogs that I listen, and of course the book and stuff. And Sean, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
I love these different shows and stuff like that. My schedule tends to be pretty busy, so I can't make as many as I want, but I love the times that I have. I love what you're doing. So
cool, man.
Keep at it. I will see you all later.
Thanks for sharing your story.
Thanks, Nick. That was nice.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Yeah. All right. I'm going to go kiss my kids goodnight. So good night, everybody.
Bye, Matthew. Thanks again, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody. This was a lot of fun. Thanks, Sean.
Bye. Thanks again, Tracey. Bye, Matt.
Guys.
Bye.
Thanks, Sean. I'll look forward to hearing the recorded version.
I'll send it out to y'all.
Okay. Take care.
Bye.
I'll see you tomorrow, Sean.
All right. Take care, Bob.